Morning, all. All right, so we're up to the 75-76 season. Once again, the NHL doesn't know how maps work. The Norris Division, Montreal ends up winning the Norris Division. They have 127 points. They're first overall, and it's not a problem for them. They go 58-11-11. They're coached by Scotty Bowman at this point. 337 goals scored, 174 goals against. The LA Kings are a distant second, still second though. 38-33-9 record for 85 points, 263 goals scored, 265 goals against. Pittsburgh Penguins are third, 35-33-12 record, 339 goals scored, 303 goals against, 82 points. Under Mark Beaulieu, they ended up with a record of 15-23-5. They made a coaching change. Ken Schinkel comes in as coach and gives them a record of 20-10-7 the rest of the way and helps them make the playoffs. The Detroit Red Wings, under coach Alex Delvecchio, 26-44-10 record, 62 points, 226 goals scored, 300 goals against. As I've been saying, there's a Delvecchio video I've already made. The Washington Capitals, they get better. 11-59-10 record, though. 32 points, 224 goals scored, 394 goals against. They start the season coached by Milt Schmidt. They have a record of 3-28-5. They replace him with Tom McVie, who goes 8-31-5 the rest of the way. I mean, it's a bit of improvement, I guess. 5-3 in the extra 8 games. The Adams Division's won by the Boston Bruins, who are coached by Don Cherry. 113 points for them, record of 48-15-17. 313 goals scored, 237 goals against. The Sabres are coached by Floyd Smith. They go 46-21-13, 105 points, 339 goals scored, 240 goals against. The Maple Leafs are coached by Red Kelly. They end up 34-31-15, 83 points for them, 294 goals scored, 276 goals against. The Seals, things are still hapless in Oakland for the California Golden Seals. They go 27-42-11, 65 points, 250 goals scored, 278 goals against. They are coached by Jack Evans. The Patrick Division is led by the Philadelphia Flyers as we go west. 51-13-16 record for the Flyers under coach Fred Shero. 118 points, 348 goals scored, 209 goals against. The Islanders are rising. 101 points for them, a record of 42-21-17 under coach Al Arbour. 297 goals scored, 190 goals against. The Atlanta Flames, they finished with a positive record, 35-33-12, 82 points under coach Fred Creighton. 262 goals scored, 237 goals against. The New York Rangers, times are tough for the Rangers. 29-42-9 record for 67 points, 262 goals scored, 333 goals against. They would make a coaching change as well. Ron Stewart goes 15-20-4, is replaced by John Ferguson Sr., 14-22-5 record for John Ferguson. The Smythe Division is won by the Chicago Blackhawks that season. They only go 32-30-18, so 82 points wins that division. Wouldn't have been second or third in most others. Billy Ray still the coach there. They have 254 goals scored, 261 goals against. The Vancouver Canucks finished second by 1 point, 33-32-15 record, 271 goals scored, 272 goals against. Phil Maloney, the coach for the Canucks at that time. The St. Louis Blues go through some things that year. 29-37-14 record, 72 points, 249 goals scored, 290 goals against. Under coach Gary Young, they're 9-15-5. Lynn Patrick takes over for 8 games. They go 3-5 in those 8 games, and then Leo Boivin becomes the coach, and they go 17-17-9 under Boivin. Ted Harris is the coach in Minnesota, where the team goes 20-53-7, so 47 points, 195 goals scored, 303 goals against. And the Kansas City Scouts, in their second and final season as a National Hockey League team, 12-56-12 record for them, 190 goals scored, 351 goals against, 36 points. They are coached by Bep. It's either Gooey Dolan or it doesn't matter. He goes 11-30-4, and then everything gets worse. Just think about it. 11-30-4 under the previous coach. Sid Abel takes over for 3 games. They lose all 3. And then Eddie Bush is behind the bench. They go 1-23-8 under Eddie Bush. So as bad as things were in that first half of the season, maybe changing the coach made things worse. So the Kansas City Scouts and the Washington Capitals, not really any better in their second season than their first. And things are just, it's what happens when you expand too quickly. So Montreal sets a record for wins and points with 58 wins and 127 points respectively, breaking records set by the Boston Bruins. Orr's Norris streak comes to an end. He had won 8 Norris trophies in a row. That is now over. November 7th of 1975, the Bruins make a huge trade. They trade Phil Esposito and Carol Vadnais to the New York Rangers for Brad Park, Jean Rattel, and Joe Zanussi. Of course, Brad Park, one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Bobby Orr dealing with injuries. It's his knees. And so bringing in Park makes a lot of sense. But Esposito was not a huge fan of being traded to the New York Rangers. I'll just leave it at that. June 23rd, 1975, the LA Kings signed Marcel Dion. So the Wings wouldn't give in to his salary demands. Kings are like, we'll pay him. And so the Wings are compensated with Dan Maloney and Terry Harper, which takes a little while, but both of them end up reporting. But I'm going to go ahead and say the Kings win that exchange. The Super Series of 76 takes place from December 28th till January the 10th. And while I'm wandering around at this point in time on Earth, I'm a 3-year-old. I'm not watching that. So January 11th of 1976, during that Super Series, CSKA's Kharlamov was their best player. He gets a hit from Ed Van Impe that the Soviets didn't like. So the Soviets take this tour of North America. They're not a huge fan of North American hockey in general, but the Flyers, being the Broad Street Bullies and all, really rile them up. So the hit from Ed Van Impe, they wait for a penalty call. There's none coming. So the Soviets protest. They leave the ice. They leave the game. And they would come back and finish it out, but the Flyers did beat them in that game. And yeah, the Soviets had a bad taste in their mouths from that one because yeah, Ed Van Impe just takes Kharlamov and just flattens him. The Scouts, they won one of their final 44 games. So yeah, 1 out of 44 games that they won to end out the season. February 7th of 1976, a day that lives in infamy for the Boston Bruins, a little bit anyways. Daryl Sittler has 6 goals and 4 assists in a game against Boston, where Don Cherry had to leave. I think it was Dave Reese that was in the net, had to leave him in the net. And it was a tough night for Reese. It was a tough night for the Bruins, but it's a historic night for Daryl Sittler. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say no player's ever going to get 11 points in one game. So I think that record's pretty safe amongst the NHL's all-time records. October 8th of 1975, Doug Jarvis starts a 964-game Ironman streak. That's a lot. It's a lot of games. I remember when he broke Gary Unger's record. Gary Unger had the Ironman streak before Jarvis, and there was some debate about whether or not that was really truly an Ironman streak because Jarvis was more of a no-hitter than Unger, but either way, Jarvis playing 964 games in a row, that's a pretty solid record. March, I'm aware it's not the record now, just at the time it was. March 13th of 1976, Chicago Blackhawks coach Billy Ray, he gets his 501st win, which is the most with a single team. He passes Toe Blake, who had the record with 500 behind the Montreal Canadiens bench. April 4th of 1976, Tony Esposito is the first goaltender to record 7 straight 30-win seasons. So while Chicago's not a fantastic team at this point, Tony Esposito's doing everything he can to keep them relevant and keep them in the playoffs. So the Hart Trophy that year goes to Bobby Clarke of the Flyers. The Art Ross goes to Guy Lafleur of the Montreal Canadiens. The Masterton goes to Rod Gilbert of the New York Rangers. The Calder goes to Brian Trottier of the New York Islanders. He ends up being a pretty big star. So the Islanders got Potvin, they got Trottier, soon they're going to have Bossy, and soon they're going to be the best team in the league. The Conn Smythe goes to Reggie Leach of the Philadelphia Flyers. The Jack Adams goes to Don Cherry of the Boston Bruins. The Norris Trophy goes to Denny Potvin of the New York Islanders. The Lady Byng goes to Jean Rattel of the Boston Bruins. The Lester Pearson goes to Guy Lafleur of the Montreal Canadiens. And the Vezina goes to Ken Dryden, also of the Montreal Canadiens. So your league all-stars, Bobby Clarke of the Flyers is your first-team all-star at center. Gilbert Perreault is the second-team all-star. On the right side, Guy Lafleur of the Habs is first-team All-Star. Reggie Leach of the Flyers is second-team All-Star. On the left side, Bill Barber of the Philadelphia Flyers, your first-team All-Star. Rick Martin of the Buffalo Sabres is second-team All-Star. On the blue line, it is notable there's no Bobby Orr here. He didn't play very much. Denny Potvin of the Islanders and Brad Park of the Boston Bruins are your first-team All-Stars. On the second team, Borje Salming of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Guy Lapointe of the Montreal Canadiens second team. On the blue line, or in net, Ken Dryden's the first-team All-Star for Montreal. Glenn Chico Resch is your second-team All-Star from the New York Islanders. So your scoring leaders, Guy Lafleur, as mentioned, wins the Art Ross. 80 games, 56 goals, 69 assists, 125 points. The era of Lafleur's here. It's not that long of an era, though, because there's this Gretzky guy who comes along in a bit. Bobby Clark, 76 games, 30 goals, 89 assists, 119 points. Gilbert Perreault, 80 games, 44 goals, 69 assists for 113 points. Bill Barber, 80 games, 50 goals, 62 assists, 112 points. I believe that's the only 50-goal season for Bill Barber. Pierre LaRouche of the Pittsburgh Penguins, player I liked a lot when I started watching hockey. 76 games, 58 goals, or 53 goals, 58 assists for 111 points. I accidentally wrote 58 and 58. I apologize. Jean Rattel going from the Rangers to the Bruins, 80 games, 36 goals, 69 assists, 105 points. Pete Mahovlich of the Montreal Canadiens, 80 games, 34 goals, 71 assists, 105 points. Jean Pronovost playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins, 80 games, 52 goals, 52 assists, 104 points. In net, Ken Dryden leads the league in wins that year. He goes 42, 10, and 8, 927 save percentage, and 8 shutouts. That's pretty good. Wayne Stevenson in Philadelphia, 40, 10, and 14 record, 908 save percentage, and 1 shutout. Stevenson does his best, but he's not Perron. Gilles Gilbert, 33, 8, and 10 record, 888 save percentage, and 3 shutouts. I've got a Gilbert picture right over here. Tony Esposito, 30, 23, and 13 record for him with Chicago, 905 save percentage, 4 shutouts. So we get into the playoffs, and again, we're doing the preliminary round where you've got best 2 out of 3, and then the quarterfinals where everybody intermixes. Preliminary, Toronto beats Pittsburgh 2-1. The LA Kings win both games against the Atlanta Flames. The New York Islanders win both games against the Vancouver Canucks, and the Buffalo Sabres knock out St. Louis 2-1. So we move on to the quarterfinals, and the Islanders keep rolling. They beat Buffalo 4-2. Boston beats LA in 7 games. Good thing they're both in the East, so that must have been some pretty simple travel there, right? Philadelphia beats Toronto 4-3, and Montreal sweeps the Chicago Blackhawks. In the semifinals, we got Boston and Philadelphia. This would have been a fun series to watch in the mid-70s. Boston beats Philadelphia 4-2 in the first game, and then Philadelphia wins the rest 2-1, and then they go into Boston. They win 5-2 and 4-2 respectively. They go back home and they win 6-3, win the series 4-1. The other semifinal sees the Islanders and the Montreal Canadiens, and again, the Islanders are getting closer. They're not quite on that level yet, though. Montreal wins both games at home, 3-2 and 4-3. Then they go into New York. They win 3-2 before the Islanders get a win 5-2, and then Montreal wins the last game of the series at home, also by a score of 5-2 to win the series 4-1. In the Stanley Cup Final, Montreal makes quick work of the Philadelphia Flyers, who are looking to win their 3rd straight Stanley Cup. 4-3 and 2-1 at home, and then they go into Philadelphia. They win 3-2 and 5-3. Montreal sweeps the Philadelphia Flyers. The Broad Street Bullies era officially done at that point. The Flyers haven't won a Stanley Cup since '75. They've had plenty of opportunities. It's odd, but as we go through this, you'll see how often they make the Stanley Cup Final. Just can't quite get over the hump again. So in that Stanley Cup Final, Guy Lafleur had 2 goals and 5 assists. Steve Shutt had 3 goals, 3 assists. Larry Robinson had a goal and an assist. And Gainey, who for some reason I forgot the Y off the end of his name. I think it's just this board was huge and I just wanted to get it done. Gainey had 1 assist in the Stanley Cup Final. Ken Dryden, 902 save percentage in the final. Reggie Leach had 4 goals in the Stanley Cup Final. Bobby Clark had 3 assists. Bill Barber, a goal and an assist. And Wayne Stevenson had an 873 save percentage in the final. Montreal knew how to beat them, and again, it's a 4-game sweep, so understandable the goaltenders' numbers might be a little bit ugly on the Philadelphia side. And goaltending numbers are going to get ugly in general as we get towards the late 70s and into the early 80s. But we'll get there. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I just felt like it was easier to go to the 4-foot by 2-foot board now. Definitely made it so I didn't have to just scrunch everything in there. And of course, we're going to go to 21 teams and then 32 teams. And it's just easier to do this now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will talk to you again soon.